PC gaming is currently in the midst of a pretty serious glow down. Is that the opposite of glow up? Am I using that correctly? Basically, it's expensive. And the best way to gauge just how screwy a PC market is to see how price competitive pre-built gaming PCs are. You see, when the PC hardware biome is healthy, buying individual components and assembling the system yourself tends to be cheaper than a comparable pre-built because, well, you're not paying for labor or to have McAfee bend you over a table. However, when a massive external force logs a bunch of PC old growth, destabilizing the ecosystem and cratering the supply, because big pre-built manufacturers are higher up the food chain than gamers, when the ecosystem collapses, they get dibs on the limited supply, leading to like a pre-built fungal bloom. So my theory is, the more price attractive a pre-built gaming system becomes, the more you know things are real bad. So in today's video, I'm going to do a very professional market analysis to determine whether or not pre-builts are indeed back on the menu, boys. But before we get into that, today's video is sponsored by the Be Quiet Lightbase 500LX, a case for the discerning fish tank enjoyer. The 500LX not only looks the business with its unique angled front panel design and 4 included Lightwing LX 120mm fans, but it also has space for up to a 360mm radiator, massive graphics cards, and 2 possible PSU positions, which enables backside connector motherboards. So if you want to connect via the backside, grab your Lightbase 500LX with the links down below. Now, a quick note before we get into the market analysis, I do want to point out that if you have a gaming PC that is currently functional and it's running the games that you play more or less well enough for you, you shouldn't try and upgrade now. However, sometimes Zeus is real mad at you in particular for some reason, and your PC decides to break in the midst of all of this madness that's going on at the moment, and you just kind of have to buy a PC. And that's who videos like this is for, because if you really need a PC, even in these real tough times, there are ways to snag bargains here and there, and that's what we're going to try and find in today's video. But again, if you have a working PC, be happy with it, love it, cherish it, tuck it in at night before you go to bed, because you shouldn't be buying parts now unless you really have to. Now, I'm going to start off my very professional market analysis with Micro Center, because I think it's got some of the better deals around at the moment. This does cock everybody that doesn't have access to a Micro Center, me included. I'm in the same stinky, sinking boat, contemplating sodomizing a manatee because of scurvy hallucinations or whatever. But anyway, let us go and find a system. So we can either get the G Spot, the B Spot, or the Pro AI series. I'm gonna go with the G Spot. And in terms of system, I think this is a reasonable starting point. We've got a powerful CPU, a powerful current gen graphics card, and a bunch of storage in it, which should make it very difficult for individual components to compete in terms of pricing, but we'll see how it goes. So this system is what we're gonna try and beat with parts we're buying from Micro Center. We're starting off with 7800X 3D. Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna set the bundles aside because I think that that's another level on which it makes this comparison a little bit unrealistic for everybody that doesn't have access to a Micro Center, but we can kind of incorporate that into the results a little bit later. We have our $380 7800X 3D. This CPU is a great deal because this thing is an absolute monster. So that system has 32 gigs of RAM in it, which at the moment seems to sell for $380 on the low end. Whoa, it also has a 2 terabyte SSD in.
A few moments later.
$430 for a 2 terabyte SN7000 drive is an absurd amount of money. It was like $140 like a couple months ago. That's crazy. Now, putting that outrage aside, what is interesting is there's quite a big spread in pricing here, because for $210, we can still get a 2 terabyte inland drive. Ooh, okay, so according to Tom's Hardware, it is a DRAM-less drive, which isn't great, but considering that we have to pay twice as much to get a not DRAM-less one, I'm A, gonna assume that this is the drive that's in the Micro Center system, and B, it's so much cheaper. So we're gonna do this. Next up, we have a 9070 XT. Yeah, you can get a 9070 XT for $600. That's awesome. And this doesn't even look like a version of the card that would get you laughed out of a locker room. So yeah, let's take that bad boy. Okay, so we're already, with just the RAM, CPU, storage, and graphics card, almost at the price what Micro Center charges for the entire system. So let's add in a motherboard. Yeah, like 190. That looks like a reasonable motherboard. Now, in terms of case, we could definitely go cheaper than $95, but let's do this H5 Flow. This is a nice chassis, and I think there's a lot of selection in that price point. Because we have a 9070 XT, we have reasonable power draw, so we want something that can handle it. We don't want to cheap out on the power supply much. Now, there is the option to go with like an 850 watt power spec unit, which is again a Micro Center branded thing. But I think even if you're not looking at Micro Center, $100 is a reasonable price for a decent power supply for this system. Now, from the picture, we can see that there is some 240mm AIO on this system. Do I recognize it? Oh, no, that's it. Oh, yeah, never mind. I found it. Okay, so $80. So it's going to cost us $2,035 to buy individual components with the same spec as this power spec Micro Center system that sells for $1,700. And that price doesn't include Windows 11 Home, so you're still gonna have to sail the 7 seas or whatever, or actually buy some Windows 11 for that system. I also replicated that card on Amazon, and it cost about $80 more. Interestingly though, the pricing distribution was different. Our RX 9070 XT, for example, was about $120 more expensive, but the RAM and cooler were cheaper, which helped keep the price disparity in check. Now you may be saying, but David, surely this is again because it's a Micro Center system that the pricing is so competitive. And it's on sale, which in all fairness, it is often. But still, let's look at other options. Here, we have an Acer Nitro system that has a 5070 in it. So it is a slower graphics card and a slower CPU for about 1,650. But you also get 32 gigs of DDR5 and a 2TB SSD. And when I changed my Amazon card to reflect the Nitro 60's specs, aside from using the X variant of the CPU because that was all that was in stock, building it yourself is still $220 more expensive. Now obviously that price increase does mean that you don't have to have a Nitro 60, which is a pretty huge boon, but at least Nitro systems have gotten slightly better over the last 5 years. Buying one of these pre-built today is not the same as buying one of these pre-built 5 years ago, because the entire tech YouTube space has collectively been ragging on these pre-builds. They have done a lot to improve them. I mean, this is an Acer Nitro system, and we've got full mesh on the front. We've got what looks like a reasonable CPU cooler, and surely the 32 gig one doesn't come with a single stick of RAM, because a single stick of RAM is a massive issue these days, because it's going to cost us like $1 billion to actually fix our RAM configuration here. Okay, well, according to Micro Center's listing, there is 2 16 gig sticks in here. So that contradicts the picture. I'm gonna assume that Micro Center's listing is correct, but you should probably find that out before buying one of these if you did want to. I then decided to circle back to the whole core component bundle thing that Micro Center offers to see how much money you save going with that, as opposed to parting out all of this stuff individually, and this is where the real value seems to lie. Whoa, that's already so much cheaper. That's $320 less. So if we went with a Micro Center bundle, it would be cheaper to buy individual components than it is to even buy the power spec system. And apparently, there is a lot of this in stock, right? So if you need a core to a system at the moment, this is actually a really good way to go. I'm curious to see what like a Canadian equivalent of these bundles look like. So with Canada Computers, you also have the option to buy bundles to get discounts on RAM. So that is something to bear in mind, right? Is that if you have this option, it might be worth looking at. I'm not a huge fan of the whole bundling thing because it's often a way to get rid of like crappy components that don't sell normally. But I mean, we've got a reasonable looking B850 motherboard with a reasonable 32 gig kit and a 7800 X3D. Like, these are components that I would buy individually if the prices were good enough on them. And then you're saving 260 Canadian dollars by doing that. So again, we have, when it comes to the core components in that Acer Nitro system, a Micro Center bundle that saves us a huge amount of money. Like that puts us at like pre-RAM crisis pricing, basically. Now, when it comes to other OEM pre-builds like HP Omen or whatever, Best Buy is probably a better option to get them. And here you can get like this system. I've tested one of the lower end versions of this newer HP Omen before, and it wasn't great. I had some issues with it, but I think the higher end ones are maybe a little bit better. The thing is though, the pricing of this is a little bit concerning because in terms of specs, we do get 32 gigs of DDR5, which is good. But we have to take a Ryzen 7 8700F, which isn't a terrible CPU on its own, but it's not a great gaming chip for the money. And when you pair it with like an RTX 5070, that CPU might actually be a little bit of a bottleneck while gaming. And that, combined with the 1TB SSD, means it's actually cheaper to just buy all of the components and build it yourself. So luckily, it's not bad enough that we have to buy one of these. Yet. And whoa, that HP Omen is a really terrible deal if you take this system into account. Again, it's an Acer Nitro, which isn't the best, but you get a much faster gaming CPU in it, a 4700F, and it's $300 cheaper. But aside from the OEM pre-built options like Lenovo, HP, and Acer and stuff, there are also system integrator pre-built options, which might be a little bit better. So let's go over to iBuyPower. Okay, you can get really crazy cases and stuff, but okay, here for $1,700, you can get again a 14700KF, which is a good gaming CPU. I think BIOS-wise, they figured out how to not get those to catch on fire, so that's good. 32 gigs of RAM, a 2TB SSD, and an RTX 5070. And if you part out that system on Amazon, you'd have to spend $300 more to build that PC yourself. And one of the advantages that iBuyPower has is that it doesn't use terrible OEM system motherboards. They're actually using proper custom components. Although the inside of the system still looks a bit pre-built-y, although if this picture is accurate, it could be worse. There's even RGB on the RAM. Wow. And you do also run the risk of getting a system that was assembled by a drunk orangutan falling down some stairs, which I guess in my case wouldn't be any different to me just assembling the PC myself. So in conclusion, if you shop around, you do actually get better priced gaming pre-builts than buying the components yourself and then assembling it yourself. However, there are options for you to get around that. Bundle deals, for example, is a great way to save a bunch of money on RAM. It does have the issue where it limits your selection. You have to go with the components in that bundle deal, and you should probably research them individually to make sure that you're happy with those components. You're not settling to save a bunch of money on RAM. I also want to do a follow-up video in about 6 months to see if the state of our biome improves, because at the moment, I don't think we're quite in a mass extinction level event yet. Although hopefully the meteor misses us and hits data centers instead. We can only hope. Fingers crossed. Which brings me to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And yeah, until the next one. Bye-bye.